Hello and welcome BCM325 to my beta presentation of the Up On It podcast. The Up On It podcast is a sex futurology podcast where we basically look at different areas in media and society where sex is involved and try and predict how this will change in the future. Currently, we only have our first episode of our podcast up, which is the future of pornography and self-pleasure. This episode of the podcast has so far received 52 listens on SoundCloud and 4 on Podbean, with 9 likes overall. The first 36 plays that we received on this episode were listened to on the first 2 days of the podcast release. However, we have steadily gotten at least 1 or 2 plays every couple of days since our release, with currently 4 plays in the last 24 hours. There are a couple of things that we want to change with the structures of our future episodes, and there were 3 main things that we have decided to focus on. The first thing that we need to improve is our audio quality. We are aware of this. We had some technical difficulties with our last episode, which is just one of the many joys of long distance podcasting and group work. So we know how to fix that, and we have a plan for next time. The second thing that I think we're going to change is the structure of how we prepare for and record the podcast. Last time, what we did is we found a couple of areas that we thought would be interesting to discuss. We separated, did our own research, came back and sort of taught each other about what we'd learnt during the podcast and discussed our opinions, asked each other questions, and discussed future predictions, and just had a pretty casual conversation about our findings. We received some feedback saying that this sort of made it sound like we didn't know what we were talking about, and so I think the future plan is to teach the audience rather than to have them experience us teaching each other. Thirdly, we were told that we went on too many off-topic feminist rants, and I think that this will be an easy fix by having a more structured way that we prepare and record the podcast. Something that I've noticed through watching the weekly movies in class, which has had a bit of an influence on how we're going to structure the podcast, is that when the media, even fictional media, predicts the future, it often seems to have a really heavy influence on the future. I think that people become inspired by the ideas and thoughts and themes that they are exposed to in media and sort of work towards making them a reality. So I feel like for our upcoming episodes, instead of predicting the future, we will plan to impact the future. For example, our upcoming episode that we're recording shortly is about the future of sex in gaming. When looking at the present, we see a lot of representations of sex in gaming as sensationalist sex for straight males. And so I think by talking about the future of queer representation, the representation of female sexual empowerment, the representation of sex in media in general as being a quite meaningless thing and how that could be changed, are all ways that we can impact the representation of sex in the media for the future. I think by changing that, we can also change not only the media, but the way our future culture views and discusses sex as well.